To no one's surprise, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom released, and it very well may be the best game of 2023. That being said, there's still plenty wrong with the game, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Everything wrong with Tears of the Kingdom. Minor spoiler warnings for both the dungeons of Tears of the Kingdom as well as some of the bosses. They will not be discussed in depth, but they will have short clips to illustrate my points. So The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has been in my Switch since I picked it up back on release day, but there are a few things that honestly aren't perfect with the game. I know that it's gotten rave reviews. I've personally said that I've loved it. The more I've played it, there are a few things that could have been improved. Let's dive right in. So the first thing I'll get out of the way is the combat. Again, it's basically exactly the same as Breath of the Wild. The difference is that now you can do all these funky things with building and reversing time and all that kind of stuff, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But it's not really combat. It still really relies on dodging and then flurry rush, which is just slamming on your attack button, and then shields blocking the majority of everything almost. It's fine. It's not the point of the game, but it's not great. There are a number of games that do it better. There are a number of action games that do it far better. Things like God of War, the Souls series, obviously. There are a lot of games that do fighting much, much better than Tears of the Kingdom, and honestly, it feels like they basically didn't touch it, except for all of the extraneous things around it, like how you confuse weapons and those types of things. I would have loved to have seen an improved combat system, but that's not what we got. The next thing is just something that's honestly plagued the Switch, and it may be mostly due to limitations of space and memory and those types of things, but voice acting. Voice acting in many games on the Switch is missing almost entirely, or you get a few choice cutscenes, and that's what happens in Tears of the Kingdom. You're going to have some main animated cinematics that are fully voiced. You're going to have some interspersed voicings from here and there, you know, with the mysterious voices and whatnot. Other than that, it's the majority of, oh, aw, ah.
Ha!
And that's what you're going to get out of the majority of the characters with text bubbles that you got to read. And to top it all off, Link is still a mute. I don't know why they feel like this is the right decision to make. All you do is you see all these interactions with other characters where Link kind of like shrugs and you see he's like motioning like he's talking. And then you have to read the interpretation. You don't even see what Link says. You literally just have to interpret it based off of what the other character is reacting to. Maybe it's a memory limitation or something, but it's certainly behind many other modern games, and it's something that I wish was improved with many Switch games, but especially in Tears of the Kingdom. Next up is, again, something that plagues Switch games: performance issues. Now, in my previous video, I talked about how impressive it was that all this ran on the Switch. And it is. And I take that into consideration when looking at this. This isn't something that I kill the game for, but the Switch does struggle. I found one particular area. It's loaded with all kinds of animals and things that are flying around, and I mean, the Switch kind of grinds to a crawl. It's maybe 20 frames per second. It's honestly kind of tough to play through. Now, again, when you're fighting one or two things, not a huge deal. There are some boss battles where they have ads and stuff that are around, and that can all kind of get slow and sloppy, especially if you start using Ultra Hand on top of it. Performance is still an issue with the Switch, as it is with the majority of games. It is with Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I still haven't crashed. I still haven't had any major bugs. I've had a couple of hiccups where something has happened and I've had to warp out of it. It's a super solid game, but the performance is still not great, and I would love to see an upgraded piece of hardware that can run it at a more consistent frame rate. I'd love to see it at 60 frames per second. We're not going to get it on the Switch. There's no patch, there's no amount of overclocking that's going to get it there, but I would love to see it. The next part is similar to Breath of the Wild. It's split up into the different factions of people. So you have all of the same factions that you had in the prior game. As far as what you're doing in Hyrule, how you're getting to the point of getting to endgame, you're dealing with the same people. You basically got the different elements with the major towns, and then you're trying to help out the prince or princess or whoever is in charge of that group. It's the same as Breath of the Wild. Now, the story's a little different. What happens is a little different, but the part that really kind of gets to me And other people have said this. When you're going from one to the other, obviously the characters and the players in it are different, but what they say and what happens is almost the same. It takes a lot of the individual novelty out of the groups, and there's not a whole lot there. I mean, some of the lines are literally repeated between them. So if you've seen one, you've seen the majority of each of them, unfortunately. Again, there are specifics and details and stuff. They're not exactly the same, but they're so similar. I wish there was a little more differentiation, a little more progression to it. Maybe it's partly because of the open world nature, so one does not affect the other. The order that you do them in doesn't affect the other ones. But again, it's just a little homogeneous. It's just a little too samey between each of the different groups. The next complaint, again, similar to Breath of the Wild, we still don't really have classic dungeons. And there's some kind of cool things, but if you think of the classic Zelda dungeon, it's not really this. I mean, it's still going into an area and it's puzzles and you're trying to unlock something that gets you to the point of fighting a boss. It's formulaic. It's Breath of the Wild's version of dungeons. Maybe it's a little more individual because where these things are located, it's not like the beasts from the first game where they literally all look the same inside. It's just how they were laid out and the mechanics of them were different. They do look different. They are in different areas, but it's pretty much the same thing. They are more fun, I think, than the beasts from Breath of the Wild, but I would love to see something more of a complete dungeon experience and a little more varied with a little bit more detail and intricacy between them. Another carryover from the prior games, breakable weapons. Now, I gotta be honest, when I first started playing again with breakable weapons, and after I had recently played through some long games where weapons didn't break, I kind of liked the idea of having to use different weapons and switch between them because they're breakable. But man, they're so damn fragile. Like, they break super fast, and I'm always trying to hold on to my really high damage items, but then I fight like a mid-tier boss and I'm like, maybe I should use it here, and I go through a few items and I kind of feel like, man, that was kind of a waste. It's still not perfect. I wish they either made them endure a little longer or give you a way to repair items that were really strong that you found. Yes, I know things respawn with Blood Moon. You could go back out and get them. But to me, that seems like a lot of backtracking, a lot of extra stuff. You can fuse items that are more basic and add on like special parts you get from defeating monsters, and then it adds a whole bunch of damage and stuff, but it doesn't add a whole bunch of durability. I wish there was some way to increase durability so you could find some weapons that you really enjoyed using and stack them up with fusions and try to hold on to them. But again, it's not really in the game, and it can be frustrating. You'll go from, I have too many weapons, I can't pick any up, to I just blew through 8 of my weapons and I just barely killed this boss and I've got nothing left afterwards. I think it's not the worst mechanic in the world, but it does kind of irk me and irritate me, and especially if you didn't like it in Breath of the Wild. It's back with a vengeance, and I wish it was tweaked a little more than it was. Another thing that I haven't really loved when it came to Tears of the Kingdom is the bosses. Now, I believe they have improved the bosses from Breath of the Wild. There are some cool interactions with the bosses, but it's still not great. I mean, these bosses they're gimmicky, you have to kind of figure them out. They're like a puzzle in their own, which I guess fits into the whole aesthetic, but they're honestly not that memorable. They're not that crazy. I don't know, they just don't do it for me. Maybe it's because they're too gimmicky, maybe it's because I'm still just not a huge fan of the way the combat works. I'm not totally sure, but the bosses, they're not fantastic, at least early mid-game bosses. One thing that I think that this narrative of Tears of the Kingdom has kind of lent itself to, for better or for worse, and in this case, I would argue kind of for worse, is that you have your big bad, you have kind of like the random evil minions, maybe you have one or two like gray enemy kind of nefarious groups that are sort of out there and they'll mess with you, but there are never really intermediaries or warring factions, or when you're going through your cutscenes and your cinematics and your story, there's no like gray, you know, it's all black and white. They're your good guys, they're your bad guys, and that's it. There's no one in between, there's no one with side motives, there's no one who's like under the big bad who's looking for a way out or looking for a way to take power for their own. it's a little too formulaic when it comes to that. And I would love to see a more dynamic bad guy, for lack of a better term, group. I think it's sort of the next level, the next evolution of storytelling for Zelda and Link. And maybe the problem is just that we generally know who the bad guy is going into Zelda games. And we generally know what's going to be happening and going to be kind of like nameless husks underneath them. But I would love to see like a group, like a more kind of sinister, underhanded, double-dealing group of enemies. You know, someone that, I don't know, the lieutenants of Ganon or something like that. But something that's a little more modern when it comes to the storytelling. Ganon is like a rogue on his own who's the Demon King, and he's out there and he's trying to destroy the world, and he's single-handed basically because everyone underneath him are these mindless bokoblins and these other things, and it's not like a group. There's no character to it. It's almost like a bunch of zombies with the head zombie leading it, you know? It's like, great, you've got the one character, that one evil, nefarious character who's doing things and showing up in cutscenes and is wreaking havoc, and then his minions go out and do whatever. I don't know. It's just, it's a little more formulaic than I'd like to see, and I think that it kind of narrows things down too much to one individual evil that you're trying to stop. Again, that's been sort of the Zelda formula forever, but it doesn't mean we got to stick with it. So Nintendo, let's think of something for the next Zelda game. Let's try and get a little more, I don't know, coordination on the bad guy's side, or maybe get more than just one evil bad. Something. We need something. We got to spice it up. It's a little too samey when it comes to that. We'll talk briefly about a few nitpicks that I have. A couple of things that have just kind of irked me as I've gone through the game. One is with the quest system. They do put like a little dot to show you where to go, sort of. The majority of the time, that dot kind of sticks on the original quest giver. So you'll get a quest that maybe it's a main quest, and you can't really follow the dot. The dot's the person that you just spoke to get the quest. It's not the next part of the quest or the area of the next part of the quest. It's the person you just spoke to. I would rather not have it there than have it point me to the person that I don't want to go to. Because lots of times when you're floating through the air and you're using your glider and whatnot, you're trying to pick out landmarks, particularly when you go out of one of the towers. So you're super high up, you can't really see below the clouds, and you're trying to aim for something, and if you forget that the quest marker is still on the original quest giver, you might float right back to where you just were, and then curse yourself out, and then go back and jump out of the tower again. Next, Link's movement is good, not great. Sometimes it can be pretty frustrating. There are still moments when you're climbing where there's like a lip on a ledge that comes out, and if you try to like hop out to that, it's not intuitive. Most of the time you won't do it. He'll just kind of like keep slamming his head into the lip. There are elements of his movement which aren't that great, that aren't that exact, and it could have been improved. Maybe it's better than Breath of the Wild. I'm not that sure. I haven't played much Breath of the Wild in the past, several months, just a little bit preparing for this, and I just feel like it's a little bit clunky. It's annoying that you don't even have auto advance on the text. So like a character finishes speaking, I gotta hit a button. Like at least if you're gonna give me cinematics or give me things to talk through, let me hit the button to start it, let it roll through. I can get a drink of soda or eat something, I don't know. Just like, let me step away while I'm watching this thing. Otherwise, if I'm there, I'm just slamming on the button, I'm getting through the dialogues, and I'm getting to the next act. So, in the end, like I said, I love the game. I would love to see some of this stuff changed for the next Zelda that comes out. It's not a perfect game. Is it Game of the Year? For me right now, yes, it's Game of the Year. We'll see as more games come out. We'll see if Starfield can do anything. We'll see if Street Fighter 6 just came out. I mean, it's hard for a fighting game to win anything like that. We have some Souls-likes coming out later in the year. I still think the Hi-Fi Rush needs to get recognized. That doesn't mean it's perfect. That doesn't mean that there aren't things that people can have gripes about and be totally 100% in the right, in my opinion. And I would love to see some changes made heading into the next Zelda. Let me know in the comments down below, what things would you like to see changed heading into the next Zelda after Tears of the Kingdom? It's great, it's amazing, it may be Game of the Year, it's not perfect. So let me know in the comments down below how you feel about the issues that I've raised. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have your own gripes? If you want to see more Tears of the Kingdom on my channel, I reviewed the Tears of the Kingdom Switch OLED, which I unboxed on the channel, as well as my response to people who have been claiming online that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is just DLC for Breath of the Wild. That was kind of a nutty thing. I didn't realize how many people really thought that. So I'll put some boxes up about that if you want to check those out. That's going to do it for today. So I'm Pirates for Pirates Gaming saying thank you for watching, and until next time, I will see you there.